Playboi Carti is an artist that seems to have an exponentially growing swarm of fans, and within that fan base has a lot of polarizing opinions, and that ranges from favorite albums to favorite songs, but it stretches beyond that with favorite leaked songs that have never come out, favorite leaked songs from a certain era, whether that be the whole Lotta Red era, being the Vamp era, or the Die Lit era, the Cash Carti era. There's a lot to choose from. So here I am sitting in front of a Playboi Carti tier list, and I'm going to try and go through and rank every song that Carti has released, period. Now, I have taken some liberty in taking a few of the leaks out of here and a few of the older songs in which I just felt like, I didn't have a basis to rate them, whether that be I didn't listen to them a lot, I wasn't as familiar with them, but there's a lot of old songs and there's a fair amount of leaks as well. And I'm going to go through album by album and then touching upon singles, unreleased, and then going and seeing what else there is and hopefully giving you a comprehensive list of, what Carti's best songs are. And my ranking basis for this are based on a few things. One of them is longevity. So if we're talking about an older song like Magnolia, has that stood the test of time? Is it relevant today? And then the second part is legacy. So how important was this song to either Playboi Carti's rise in the mainstream, his rise in the underground, or just overall like what it means to the Carti fan base and what it means to, his longevity and legacy as an artist in particular. And then the third one is just listenability. Is the song good? Do I like listening to it? And I don't think there's really much explaining that needs to go on there. So let's start with self-titled from the very beginning. Let's look at location. And, I'm not one to typically like tier list songs, so I'm kind of just mainly doing this for fun. So keep that in mind. And I want to start off more critical than anything because we're going to have a lot of songs fitting in here. Location, probably A tier because it sets the tonal mood really well for self-titled. And it kind of spawned a lot of memes, especially after the album came out. I remember that song, being the song for a lot of memes that were like people floating up or just reaching heaven or something like that. But, moving on to Magnolia, I got to put that at S tier just because of how important it was to Carti. And at the time, I'm not going to pretend like that song wasn't on repeat for me. Part of me wants to put it in A because it's definitely has not stood the test of time, even as much as other songs on self-titled. But I mean, I feel like it's Carti's biggest song ever in the way that like this is what a lot of people think of when they think of Playboi Carti. So I think it's important to put it there. Looking, people are going to hate me for this. I'm just not a huge fan of this or the next song that I'm also going to put in the same spot, Woke Up Like This. Were they important? Were they incredibly popular? Absolutely. And that makes me want to move it up a little bit more. But I'm going to keep it here because there was nothing about this collab that stood out to me specifically of like, oh, these two flow well together, or, Carti's having a standout verse over Uzi. It just felt normal, especially considering the other great collabs they have, especially the ones that have not been released. Moving on to Let It Go, absolute S-Tier Carti song because it's still fantastic today. I think it's one of, if not the best song off of self-titled, and we'll get through the rest of it and we'll get to kind of measure that out more, but I think that's a fantastic song. Half and Half, I'm gonna have to throw that in D tier just because it is a pretty forgettable song off of self-titled for me at least. And remember, this doesn't mean it's a D tier song. It means it's a D tier Carti song within the context of the rest of these ratings. And I want to reiterate that point as many times as I have to because, we're basing this on a Playboi Carti tier list. So it's not like I'm throwing a new Lil Pump song or a new Smoke Perp song in here because that would just throw everything off balance. These are Playboi Carti songs, and that's where I think it belongs within the realm of the rest of his music. New Choppa, man, that's got to be B tier because of just how well the Asapxhector feature fit. Not only that, but this kind of stood as like an Asapxhector, like we already knew Carti had that ASAP cosign being part of the mob, but this was sort of the first instance that we got of like, oh, okay, Rocky really believes in this dude, not just because he gave him a verse, because he gave him a really good verse. Other You know, a lot of people don't like this song, or a lot of people just don't really think much of it. I'm gonna throw it probably C tier. There's just not really much to say. Number 9 is an incredibly underrated song, especially off of Self-Titled. I have a friend and I that we just absolutely love this song, and you know, it's kind of a flow that is a little bit closer to the Cash Carti era flow, where like we're not going to hear any of this stuff from Carti ever again, and I think that's why it belongs in the B tier. Do that, oof, man, that's A tier for me. You know, and a lot of these songs being produced by Pierre Bourne, you know, this one stands out as like the most Pierre sounding beat outside of Magnolia. Lame, D, not much to say about it. Ya Mean, B, that Yao Ming line is fantastic, and I still hear this song circulating on TikTok and stuff like that today, as well as Flex, which seems to be another song that people have sort of grown more attached to over time because of, I think, a couple reasons, but one of them being, you know, the complete sort of beat switch we get halfway through with the feature on there. I think it's great. Kelly K is easily an A tier Carti song. The 808 beat, 808 Mafia beat on this is just, it's unbelievably good. I find myself listening to even, you know, leaked audios of Carti's different verses on this. It makes me want to put it in S tier, but I'm going to leave it in A for now. And had to C tier because, if I'm not mistaken, this was the only song on here produced by Machogt, who I've actually had the pleasure of interviewing in the past, but, you know, it marks something that, you know, that's the end of an era for him. And I could be completely mixing up with what song he produced. Either it's Had To or Half and Half. I can't remember right now. But we're past that. We made the, you know, self-titled tier list. And this actually looks pretty good and pretty balanced to me. But let's move on to Die Lit. Long Time. Easily A tier. In the same way that Location, it kind of one-upped it in recreating the same sort of ethereal intro to an album, but just kind of stepped things up a notch. I thought it was fantastic. R.I.P. is another A tier Carti song because, again, not only is it still relevant, and this whole album still sounds good. I don't really think we have to talk much about timelessness in this album because, you know, every song aside from maybe one or two just sound fantastic today, and it could be released today and I'd still like it. It would sound obviously dated if you released it today, but with the context we have now, especially, I think it really stands out. And Lean for Real, I'm really sorry. I'm gonna have to S tier this one because I just adore this song more than anything. Carti performed it once with Skepta live, and it is such a good song. The beat is fantastic, and I think it's one of Skepta's best features ever. And Carti just kind of just like, I'm on the beats for real, lean for real, and just sort of this circulating motion of lyrics, of cadence, of voice, and it just works perfectly. Moving on, Old Money, probably D tier just because it's slow, it's kind of tiresome, and honestly, I'm gonna throw Love Hurts down there too. I almost want to put Love Hurts in F tier because I really hated this song when it came out. This is a boring song. Does the beat work and do the flows work? Yes, but given we get Travis and Carti on a song, they should be doing so much more than this. That's my opinion. That was my opinion when the album came out, and it's my opinion now. Shoota, easy. S tier because this is the superior released Carti Uzi collab. That's all I'm gonna say about it. Right now, kind of underrated. Another slower song on the album, but Carti switches up his flows on it in a really cool way. Same with Poke It Out. I love this song. I think Nicki's feature on it is pretty awesome. And yeah, it's corny and it's fun, but that's kind of the point of the song almost a little bit. It has sort of a really silly vibe to it that I think Pierre's production lends a lot to. Home KOD, C tier, and it's only good because it leads up to what is my favorite Playboi Carti song, Fell in Love, which is S tier. I think this is not only Pierre's best Carti beat, but Carti and Bryson Tiller do so much good stuff on this song, and I find myself listening to it again and again to this day. And a similar song on that is Foreign, which I have to S tier just for the fact that this song sounded so ahead of its time when it came out, and it still stands that test of time and just being this completely warped, synthetic sort of sounding beat that just works miraculously in some sort of way. Moving on to Pull Up, C tier, it's nothing special, and in these, you know, again, I like this song a lot, but it's nothing special amongst the rest. Mileage is A tier. It's fantastic. This is, again, the best Keef and Carti song that they have together, but it just works so well in so many different ways, as does Flatbed Freestyle, which, I mean, come on, it's an S tier. Carti still plays this song live to this day, and you know, besides Shoota, it's the only song that I think he'll play off of Die Lit regularly. No Time with Gunna, kind of a boring Carti song, and Gunna doesn't do too much on the beat. Middle of the Summer, I think, is great. But do I want to put it B or A? I'm probably going to put it B, just because the Red Cold Hearted feature, while I enjoy it, it's not that good. Her tone of voice is just kind of off key for the beat at hand there. And Chopper Won't Miss with Young Thug, I kind of have a similar feeling about that, but I think it's a little bit worse because it's a good song for sure, but it just feels like it belongs on a different album. It doesn't feel like it belongs on Die Lit for some reason. R.I.P. Fredo, and I want to put this in S tier, but I'm probably, you know, I'm going to put it in S tier. It's another song that, along with Flatbed Freestyle, I see Carti still kind of going back to, and I mean, that Young Nudie feature is just absolutely unreal. So yeah, S tier for that song. Top, I think this song gets kind of forgotten because it's the last song on Die Lit, and it doesn't exactly leave an outro, you know, impression as much as a song like Feel Like Dying does on Whole Lotta Red. But even so, I think it's a B tier Carti song, and I like the Pierre Bourne feature a lot. Let's move on to the newest and greatest album from Playboi Carti, Whole Lotta Red. All right, first song, Rockstar Made. Man, A tier, just because it lets you know exactly what kind of album you're listening to right out the gate. The filthy tag, everything about it's perfect. Go to the Moon, I'm gonna have to D tier this one. It does not work for me, and I think what a waste of a Kanye West feature. And mainly because the Wheezy beat is so good, but the song is so detrimentally short and doesn't stretch along the strides I think it should. Apparently there's an extended version of this song out there somewhere, and I've heard it, and it sounds better than what we have here, and I wish we would have gotten that. Stop Breathing is an S-Tier Carti song. I don't really feel like saying much beyond that because of how sort of, you know, signature the I take my shirt off and all the Stop Breathing. You know, obviously he interpolated that line from a Gucci Mane song, but again, that is sort of a viral signature of Carti now. I hear that song, the sound and that specific, you know, line from the song on TikTok and other platforms all the time. And I think it's a song that a lot of people sort of, it's emblematic of this album in particular, at least this half of the album. And that's why I think it's S tier. Beano is pretty forgettable amongst the mix. And the sound is just too hyper pop-y and not enough, you know, hard stuff for what Whole Lotta Red is at this portion in the album. Jump Out the House is weird because initially I was like, I don't like this song at all. And kidding, I'm putting it a B tier. And I think it belongs here. I think it's short. It knows exactly what it is, and it's great in that regard. And, you know, I'm not going to say much about this because I see Metamorphosis and I see my first F tier Carti song. And I'll stand by this. I think this song is way too long, like minutes over what it should be. I think Carti's verse sounds weird on the beat. I don't think it's a good beat choice. I think Kid Cudi is an odd feature choice for this as well, and he delivers just kind of a boring, lukewarm verse, and there's just not really much here aside from the length of it that stands out to me. And moving on to Slayer, one of the biggest songs of Whole Lotta Red, I think for that reason and because it is just such a good it's kind of a poppy song in a way, and I think it belongs in A tier for that reason, where it's like, I'm surprised this song didn't get like radio play or anything like that, because it does sort of, it has that sound to it. And when I said like Beano is too hyper poppy, that's too hyper poppy in the way that there's just synths flying all across the board, where in Slayer everything feels a bit more controlled around Carti's cadence and how fast he'll actually rap on a verse, at least rap his melodies. And I think it works for that reason. No Sleep, part of me wants to put it up here, but I think I'm going to put it C tier just because along the harder songs on Whole Lotta Red, I don't really think it matches up against a song like New Tank, which I'm gonna put A tier because it's not as good as Stop Breathing for me, but it's literally, it feels like Stop Breathing Part 2, and Filthy kills it as he does on the rest of this album. And also Teen X, I think is the best song on Whole Lotta Red. It surprised me the second I heard it. It feels like it could be a die-lit throwaway, but it doesn't feel like it doesn't belong on Whole Lotta Red. It still feels at home on Whole Lotta Red. And that's what I think is so polarizing about it, is because this beat is so insane, and Carti's screeching vocals just reach just Olympic heights. And I was just so surprised when I heard it, and I still find myself jamming to this day by day. S tier. Meh. Better than at meh. Still not that good. C tier, again, it just doesn't really fit as much amongst the rest. Vamp Anthem, this was a very popular song, and again, emblematic, but I think it was so because of the beat, which just still feels corny to me, so I'm gonna throw that in the D tier. New Neon was a song that I heard before, it was a song that was leaked in some way before the album came out, and it doesn't do anything for me at all. Control, I know people are like, oh, I hate the Academics intro. Yeah, I do too. I don't think anybody doesn't hate that, but I think the rest of the song kind of works, and it's like definitely the most mainstream sounding of a beat that we'd hear on this album, where it's like definitely the most poppy, like the most deliberately pop sounding song on the album, and I think it works in that regard pretty well. I'm gonna throw it in the C tier. Punk Monk, fantastic song. Fits along the same lines as like a New Tank or a Stop Breathing, a little bit less aggressive on the instrumental side and a little bit more aggressive on the vocals. And we see sort of a switch in this album sort of halfway through, where it's like in the beginning it's banging bass and instrumentals just ringing, and his lyrics are much more just shouts and calls to action more than anything else, where it's like we do see him reflecting and actually talking about himself a bit more in the latter half, but things don't get less intense. They just shift from the instrumentals to the vocals. And that's not to say there's not some banging instrumentals on the second half as well. And Punk Monk's a great example of that, as is On That Time, another A-tier Carti song that this beat is insane. I mean, the beat alone marks its spot here, but yeah, it's great. King Vamp, kind of in the same vein as like Vamp Anthem. There's just like not much here that does it for me. The sort of the synth leads in this feel kind of corny, a little too mainstream, and just don't really fit on this. And I feel the same sort of about Place, where it's like, again, it's a song that was leaked before the album came out, but there's just really not much to the song. It feels very repetitive. It feels like we're sort of going over the same thing again and again. So I'm gonna throw that in D tier. Sky, another popular song off Whole Lotta Red, and one that I think is really, really, really good. It's Carti again showing that he's versatile. He can do the really hard, banging, almost punk-esque trap, but he can also do the hyper pop trap stuff as well. Over, it's another example of that, but it's again in the same way that like Place is sort of a slower song, but it's a little bit better. I Love You, I Hate You is one of the few Pierre beats we get on here, and I think it's fantastic. I'm gonna B tier it just because it sounds like it is a dialect throwaway, but not in the same vein as Teen X, where it's like I'm like, okay, this belongs on the album. I heard I Love You, I Hate You, and I thought this would work as like if we were to get a Die-Lit Deluxe, it would work in that regard, but it just doesn't work for me here. Die for Guy is easily an S tier song because I think this is the most lyrically open and sort of available Carti's been in his songs, sort of actually talking about his past, things he has struggled with his friends passing away, but still in the same way where it's like it feels like this is just like a triumphant sort of oomph of a track where, you know, he's telling us everything he can. He's spilling his heart out over this song, but it still feels almost masked in this interesting way as like a hype rage song. But, you know, as I heard firsthand at Lollapalooza, you know, this song was very special to him. And it seems that every time he performs it, he does sort of think back to the song's origins for him, which seem to be incredibly personal and incredibly emotional, and it works. And that's why this song is easily an S tier. Not Playing, this is, you know, I don't see a lot of people talking about this song. I really like it. I think the beat from Art Dealer works incredibly well, and Carti's sort of like stringing sort of chorus in the middle, like not playing, I think is really, really cool with the auto-tune. And it works great as a prelude to the album's outro being Feel Like Dying, which I'm gonna throw B tier. I think it's great. I think that it's a little bit better than Top. It's not A tier though. And it works as an outro to the album better than Top does, because it feels like we are sort of concluding something. It feels like we're finishing something with it. And I think the beat from Richie Soof really does a great job at illustrating that. And now let's look at the Carti collabs. So we're gonna start out with Crumbs, which is a song with Dram, which, like, honestly, I remember when this came out, I was so excited. I was like, new Carti song. I was like, wait, he has a feature on a Dram song? Yeah, D tier. It's not that good of a song either. Like, there's better Dram collab songs out there too. I can think of a couple off my hand that are better than that one. But yeah, it did not do much for me. Miss the Rage, I have to say a B tier, because, and sorry for anyone out there that doesn't think this, that the Mario Judah version of this song is so good. Like, I just wish that came out. And honestly, like the chorus of the song being Trippie Redd, Carti sort of feels like an afterthought on this song, but it's still a good song nonetheless, and was insanely popular. Switching Lanes with Pureborn, B tier only because it feels like the song got leaked and then it came out like half a year later. And at that point, and this is an issue for me with leaked songs getting released, it's like the listenability has decreased so much if it was released as a high quality leak. I feel like I've heard the song before, and in most cases I have. Now it's just better mixed than it's been in the past. Still a good song though, so I'm gonna B tier it for that reason. Unlock It. It's not a bad song in any regard, and honestly, Carti's verse is not as good as her verse on here, but still D tier because, like, it's just very forgettable. And yeah, there's just not too much to say about it. Pain 1993. You see, I'm deciding here. I'm gonna F tier it. I really don't like this song. I think everyone was pretty disappointed when the feature came out. It feels like it was mixed in a completely different studio than Drake's verse. I don't know if that's just how they wanted Carti's voice to sound on the song, but it didn't work. It was disappointing. The leak that we got from it before was better. And that is just always I hate that every time when it's like, how are you going to let the leaked version of this song sound better than the finished one? That's always crazy to me. And I know there's reasons for that. And part of that is sort of the sort of, you know, hidden, like, oh, am I supposed to be listening to this aspect of it? But regardless, it still stands. Plug is a song he did with Rich the Kid and Kodak Black, and I'm gonna S tier this one. I absolutely love this song. The Mexicodro beat is classic. Shout out Mexicodro. And it was premiered on World Star and has, like, I don't even know, 50 million views now, something like that. Insanely good song, and everybody's verse works on it equally. Rich the Kid, Carti, and Kodak Black somehow find a middle ground on this for them to all feel like they're not trumping one another, but they're all just on the same song, killing it. Love it. All right, next. Of course, we Ghetto Flowers. Whoa. Fly to LA for a week, A tier. Amazing collab between the two. Close to, if not better than Shoota, even though, you know, Shoota's S tier for the reasons I think of popularity. But I remember when this came out, I was like thankful to hear that, like, oh my God, Carti's still doing features for other people and they're still good. I love this song. I still think it's good. All right, moving on. 100 Racks, really forgettable feature. I remember when this came out. There's just really not too much to say about it besides that. Same Young with Gunna, again. I'm gonna D tier this one too. I think this song sucks. I remember, again, listening to this when it came out. The beat doesn't feel acclimated for Carti. It feels like kind of like, you know, Young Thug, Lil Keed, anybody at the time would have worked better on this within YSL than Carti. It just feels like, I don't know, two, and we're gonna see three pretty soon, Carti and Gunna songs together, and they just don't work. So actually, I'm gonna rate the other one right now, which is the best out of the three, which is YSL, which was their first collab on Drip or Drown 2. B tier. I really like this song, especially because it was so early in Gunna and Carti's career, both respectively, and they just seemed like they both vibe together on the song. And I'm gonna have to shoot to the reasons of it being a Pierre beat and just it working for that reason in particular, but you never know. Man, the song on D tier, forgettable. Again, there's just not really too much to say about it, but it's weird because I don't see the song Mattress on here. And if Mattress were on here, I'm not gonna pretend this is Madman. I'm gonna pretend this is Mattress. If you heard that song, there's like 20 people on that song. It's great. So I'm gonna pretend this is Mattress. Get Dripped. Really good. Really good feature in it. Again, it's still a song I hear circulating in its own regard, and also a really impressive music video with it too. Carti and Yachty always do great stuff together on tracks, which you'll see pretty soon with another song after right between them. Minute is an A tier song. I think Perfect Timing is by all means Nav's best album, and I think this song is a really good example of why this album is so fantastic. I believe it's Offset, Carti, and Nav on this song, obviously produced by Metro Boomin, and man, they all have killer verses and they spit. They are good. They're all giving their most on this, and it's apparent. Another great Carti collab song and he's not even the best feature on here. In fact, I think he might be the weakest, but nonetheless, it's still a great song. But because Carti's verse isn't as great, I'm gonna B tier it. Flex Up. This is Future, Lil Yachty, and Carti, which are all people on the song, and also in the order of who's the best. You know, Future's lead into this, just knocking the beat right away, is so good. Yachty has a great feature, and Carti just feels a little bit left in the dust, feeling like the most important one on the song, but also feeling the least integral to the song being good. So that's why I'm gonna B tier it. Next, we got London Town. I have so much nostalgia for this song, and it feels like we got a Cash Carti verse on an ASAP Mob tape. And I don't feel like I can say the same for any song but Telephone Calls. And I'm going to A tier both of these because I think they're fantastic. In fact, I'm going to S tier Telephone Calls because I think that song is so good. Shout out Pluto Nash from Chicago, produced this track. So good. Him, Tyler, A$AP Rocky, and Young Gleesh out of nowhere, killing it at the end of the song too. Everybody does A tier work on this track. I think it's great. Oh man, Run It is another S tier song produced by Digital Nas. Yachty and Carti together on this. I get the guap and I run it back and forth and back and forth. Again, in something that Carti does of this sort of repetitious verses of just back and forth and back and forth, and then building that to sort of hype up the beat. And man, it works so well. Shout out Digital Nas and Carti working early on, and also Yachty, and now Digital Nas produced Off the Grid. So it was really cool seeing them come full circle as well. There's not really much I have to say about this, especially with mileage existing. It's like this is another song that feels a bit like an afterthought of throwing Carti. Like Carti was a choice for the verse instead of a necessity, which is how some of these songs that are so great, like Telephone Calls and Run It, are, because it feels like Carti was necessary for that song to be as good as it was. And for I don't think that's exactly the case. Yo Pierre is S tier. Hold on, let me throw this up there. Yo Pierre, S tier. Another fantastic feature. This was a Pierre Bourne song, so hearing Carti on a Pierre song is always a great thing because we already know they can work so well together. But then hearing them, do it on a Pierre song, and I was like, wow. I remember the first time I heard this, I was like, Pierre can really rap with Carti. I knew he could rap outside of that, but alongside Carti, that's a whole different story. Ain't Doing That, the Southside song. I'm gonna B tier it. I think the beat is insane, obviously. Southside's rapping is just like, it's kind of forgettable, and Carti just kind of wipes the floor with him on this song in particular. And I for that reason, I do have to B tier, because like, it's not Carti's song, and I don't even think he has the most amount of time on the song, which not the best. Next one we got What. I gotta S tier this one, no doubt in my mind. The list is getting too long here, but there we go. Yeah, I gotta S tier What. This was the beginning of Carti's, you know, sort of ASAP affiliation. This song with Uno the Activist was insanely good. If you haven't seen the music video, you gotta check it out. And I love everything about this song. And like I said again and again, with songs like Run It and, you know, other songs like Stop Breathing, is sort of that repetitious, those repetitive verses creating this chorus and this sort of ethereal vibe. It works so well, and he does it in that song. V-Lone Thug, ooh man, him, and I want to say again Uno the Activist, B tier, because for the time this song came out, man, it was fire. If you were in the circles, the SoundCloud circles, when these tracks were circulating, especially when Carti and Uno and Fauny kind of actually had something going on, man, these were great songs. And I think that that's sort of a perfect introduction into the songs, the Cash Carti era songs, which, you know, I'm not gonna touch on all of them, but I'm gonna touch on the ones that I think are worth talking about, like Talk. And if you've heard the Icy remix on this, I can't say his full name, it's an S-Tier Carti song. It brings the song to a whole nother level, and Carti's very sort of, you know, now we hear the baby voice. This was his sort of monotone era, like kind of walking on the beat like this. And it worked really well, and I think Talk was a really, really, really good example of that. Same with Young, yeah, I can't say that either. The PlayStation 2 beat, I mean, if you've heard the beat, and these songs exist in a Carti 2015 to 2017 or 2016 echo chamber of SoundCloud, and those early days of, like, these songs really existed on SoundCloud and on YouTube, and that's how you had to listen to them. And it feels like that made them so much better. Fetty on Fetty on Fetty is an S-Tier Carti song, because again, if you were around in these circles at the time, you know how amazing this song is, and I can still quote it to this day. 4 Teaspoon, I believe, is with Young Bands. Not really too much to say about it, honestly. There's just not too much special about an early Young Bands feature like that, especially. And now let's look at these 2 singles really quick. Broke Boy, gotta S-Tier it. Shout out Mexicodro. This was my signature Carti song of, like, when this came out on Spotify, when he got signed, and I was like, okay, they're taking him seriously. He's signed. They're releasing this as his sort of first single before the album, and it's still good to this day. Broke Boy, what a classic song. Atme, I was so disappointed when this song came out, because, like, it's not bad. It's just not remarkable and not sort of characteristic of anything Carti's really good at. And it's so funny that this sort of came out as a single just cause, you know, it wasn't a whole lot of Red single. It was just sort of a buffer period. And it sort of feels like that. It just doesn't feel finished. It doesn't feel totally put together. And finally, let's go through some of the leaks, unreleased songs. A lot of these are newer, but let's start with Molly. He actually has played this song at a few times. I've heard it live. Great unreleased track, and you know that he knows it too. And mainly because, like, it feels like it's almost like an electronic beat that has the Carti sort of signifiers of, you know, in a very emotional sort of lead synth lead going on, and he just kills it. Kid Cudi, Pissy Pamper, for pure cultural relevance, and I'm gonna do the same with Cancun. I gotta throw these in S tier, because I think these were songs that really convinced people to listen to Carti, where they heard this song. Even people, you know, like, ask your little brother, little sister, play them the Cancun Sega beat, I guarantee they've heard it. And that was the beginning of a lot of this stuff. I think both of these songs couldn't be released due to sample clearance issues, but I mean, Cancun, you got the classic video with Skepta to go along with it, and Pissy Pamper ruled the internet for like a summer. And that's why I got to S tier these songs for the relevancy and legacy reason I put on here of you know, these songs built up what people know Carti as now. That it gained him a ton of fans. I can guarantee that. A Lot on My Mind, really good. A lot of these songs I understand, like A Lot on My Mind, why they don't get released, because they don't really fit into sort of a cabinet of Is this a hype Carti song? Is this a slower Carti song? Or is it a song that is even worth releasing for him? And sometimes I think that's hard to decide for the label. And looking at these other ones here, Whole Lotta Red League, produced by 16-Year-Old. I think I was really disappointed this didn't get an official release, because I mean, that beat is insane. And Carti does an interesting sort of rapping sort of a scheme on this, where it's very back and forth like we're used to on a lot of tracks, but he's never sort of losing that like he's always straining his voice in every verse, and it makes it that more impactful and that more good. And that's why I gotta A tier it. All right, and I'm only gonna do like I'm looking at these, and there's just really not a ton where I'm like I have to rank this. So I'm gonna do one more unreleased, and then I'll do the 2 Kanye ones. Break the Bank is an S-Tier Carti song. From the second I heard this to this day, like we still have just a crappy quality mix of this, but it's such a good song. If you look at the picture, it's kind of hard to see the Carti and Uzi in their Supreme Louis V. I mean, it stands the test of time, and it also signifies them both at their sort of underground peaks, working together and just killing it. All right, now we got the last 2. We got Off the Grid, A tier. There's not really too much to say about this that hasn't already been said. It's another sort of way for Carti to introduce himself to mainstream audiences if they weren't already familiar with him. And, you know, in the same vein, I know a lot of people don't like Junya, but I do. And the second I heard this song from the live stream, I went nuts. So I have to A tier it. And that's what it feels like a lot of the reasons for these rankings are, is like, you cannot push that personal bias out of there, especially when you're ranking every song from an artist, because it's like, if there was no, you know, at least semblance of a personal bias, what's the point of doing it? And so I did try and lay out sort of my parameters of longevity, legacy, and listenability. But at the same time, this was my unfiltered opinion that would probably be different tomorrow as it would the next day and probably the next. But this is my Carti tier list. You know, take a nice gander at it, because honestly, I like this a lot, and I think I can stand by it. So tell me what you like about it. Tell me what you don't like about it, and let me know below what you think belongs in the S tier for Carti and what you think belongs in the F tier. Thank you. Like the video, subscribe, comment, all of that. I appreciate it, and have a good rest of your week. Thank you.